Hello, my name is Marty, and I'm here with Blavity today, and I have the incomparable, I'm going to say incomparable, but I'm going to let her introduce herself. So, singer, songwriter, mother, writer, producer, all that good things. Miss Amerie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you for fighting through your tech issues. That was great.
Oh
That
my
I
goodness.
love the perseverance. So, well, we're here today to talk about your great book that's coming out. You will do great things, and to just talk about catch up with you and all the things that you've been doing, and that great collection behind you. We've already said you are our bookcase inspiration. I don't know if that's just for the interviews or if that's your life, but either way, we want a part of it because it is amazing. So, if you could tell us a little bit about your book, and then we'll go into like some of the transition as far as from an artist to an author to everything that you've been doing, leading us here today.
Well, wow, that's like the big. I'm gonna try to nutshell that. First, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about my debut picture book. You will do great things. I always wanted to write a picture book, but I knew for me, I would know everything that I wanted to say once I had a child, because I knew once I have a daughter or a son, I will know what I want to say, and that's the only way that I feel like it can really be very genuine for me. And I was right, because as soon as I had my son, we started reading to him in the womb. As soon as he was born and we were reading, there's just so many things that I wanted to tell him. You realize, like, there's one thing when you say your children are just soaking everything in, but you realize when you have a child, even when they're not an infant anymore and they're just walking down the street and they stop for every blade of grass, every dandelion, you realize how they're taking everything in, and so you realize the importance of your words more than you ever did. Your actions, the way you react to situations, you see how much they're learning. And so there were so many things that I wanted to say, but I also wanted him to see himself reflected in a book. So when we're sitting down reading the pages, there are all kinds of children and animals, but I wanted him to see someone with his skin tone or similar to his skin tone, and for it not to be a book about that, but a book that was just as wondrous as the other things that we enjoyed reading, but something that would not other him. And I experienced that when I was young too. And I didn't even realize it until I was older and I started writing my own stories. And none of my stories had anyone who looked like me in it when I was a kid. And no one said you don't belong in the story, but it's just, I didn't see people who looked like me in the books, and
Yeah.
especially when you're really young. So most of the things, you're thinking about, like, even older Sweet Valley High and all that stuff like that. And I love those books, but when you just don't see yourself, you just take that subconscious message that you don't belong in there.
Sweet Valley High was one of my favorites too. I like that one. I really did. The twins were really good. So, like you mentioned, this is your first book as far as illustration book. But this is also your first book to where you are the full author. I've noticed that you've edited some, you've been a part of some other ones. What was the difference when everything was solely on you, and then it was very personal because you kind of had your son in mind when you were writing this book? What was the difference between that and the other titles that you've been a part of?
Well, doing the anthologies, I've edited an anthology. I've been one of the contributors for a couple of them, and we have a couple of still coming too. But I also write as well. So this is my first debut picture book, but I do have, like, can't talk about it yet because it's not. I can't really
We got
tell.
an exclusive.
I haven't, but I've been
It's coming. Some okay.
longer some longer things. So I do have that. But there's so much weight with children's books because you are so influential. Again, it's wonderful for children to hear that great message of that they can do anything, that life is going to be full of ups and downs, and but having it have a tiger, having it come from an
Mhm.
animal, or having it come from a child who doesn't really look like them, or a lot of children who don't look like them, that is also another message. It's an
Yes.
unspoken message. And so I wanted to talk about life. I didn't want to talk about, the way he looks or our ethnicity or anything like that. I just wanted to talk about this amazing adventure he's going to have. But I did feel that responsibility too, because, I mean, I don't know, anyone who's been a parent or is a parent and or has children in their lives, they just know it. You're just like, whoa, wait, hold on, wait, you need me for life. Like, you need me to keep you alive, like, literally. So you feel that responsibility, and it's in a very physical way. You are the emotional support system, the physical support system. I don't want to. My One of my friends, she can be very dramatic sometimes. She's like, a child is like a vessel. When I'm going to pour into my son, she gets all into that. She's like, I got to pour these things into him so he's good when he leaves into the world. But it is that. It is that. And so you do feel the weight, and you don't have a million gazillion words to say it. You have to say it in a very succinct way. And so I tried to just distill that very personal message. And I think it ended up being very universal because we all pretty much want the same things for our kids. That was a
Exactly.
long.
Well, you mentioned representation, and although the book isn't solely about the race, because it could be universal for a child, how important is it, do you think, even back to some of your other titles that you've contributed to where you represented, or the book was about the young Black girl in STEM, things like that. How important is it for children of color or other ethnicities to see themselves in these stories to where one, they can imagine doing great things, they can see someone in these books that looks like them, to where they don't feel so isolated or alone in those, and also for the parents that are reading those books to their children to where they feel like this message is for my child. Do How important was that for you when you were actually going through the process of it?
Extremely important. Extremely important. You're aware of a lot of things, as a parent. And, for one, it's important for our children to see themselves. Not because they have to. Listen, before President Barack Obama was president, there was no one to say, hey, I did it. There was no blueprint necessarily for him in that sense. So it doesn't mean that you must have that, but I would say that those are exceptional cases where someone doesn't need that, because for the most part, everywhere around the world, people see people who look like themselves doing all kinds of things all the time. One of the bonuses we have in living in a society in which there are so many different ethnicities is that we are diverse. There is richness that comes from that diversity, cultural food, practices, just different perspectives on life. That's a wonderful plus. But one of the drawbacks is you have a lot of groups of people who then will grow up in what I consider a very unnatural state, which is that you don't see enough of yourself around. And whether that could be in a school, whether that could be in a workplace, especially in the formative years, though, that's really important, because I think it is very normal. If you look at all the countries around the world, young children are growing up and also reading books, or actually, you know what? I take that back with the reading books, because it depends on where they are. But what they're seeing around them are faces that look like theirs, which is great because they're building themselves up. They're building up their identity. They're not othered. So whatever they're facing in life, whatever hardships, is not coming because of that. It may be coming because they might be shorter or taller than others, or skinnier or heavier than others, and all those things. But it's not like a racial ethnic difference necessarily. And so what we have to do in the United States, because we have this wonderful, cornucopia of like ethnicities and cultural variety, we also have to remember, though, that it's important that children are not othered when they're young, because I would consider that an unnatural, unsupportive state of being for a child. And so the good thing is that, one, they can see themselves in the pages, but two, someone who doesn't look like the kids they should read those too, because all kids should read books that contain characters that look like them but also are very different. And
Yes.
so it's not, do you know what I mean? So it's a child who doesn't have a brown skin tone, or isn't black or brown, can or isn't mixed with, Asian, they can benefit too, because they see someone else. And we all do that. We all take in media that's full of people who are like us, but also different. And I think that's
Very true. Very true. I think when you introduce things to a child, especially at a younger age, to where they realize differences in people and they realize there's a common bond, but we are different. She might
yeah.
have a different skin color, hair color, anything like that. It does build a level of tolerance and understanding to where, again, I don't necessarily look like the person in this book, but that means my friend Johnny, who looks like this person in the book, can have this. And it kind of creates a level of compassion and understanding between those kids. And that's really where it should start. I would like to talk about what got you into, being an author. What got you here? I know we were introduced to you in music, and you definitely made your mark. What transitioned you to kind of jumping into books full time, to where now you have your book club and then all these titles and something coming that you don't want to tell us about? But definitely, what was the transition like from being, the artist to where you are now as the author?
Well, I've always been a bookworm. Some of those I have like that's like my one of my favorite shelves. That's like that book right there is the Brothers Grimm fairy tales. It's one of the first books that I ever got. My parents got that for Christmas, and I have that on tape of where I presented it. And I'm like, so I keep going like this, and I'm like being very extra. And I was like forcing my sister to sit down because she has to listen to me read some of it. So I've been a big bookworm always. And it was just natural, I think. There's some point in my career where I felt like something was missing, and I was trying to pinpoint what that was, and the only thing I could really grab was like paper, the smell, pens, and then I was like, you know what I need to do? I think I need to like allow time to get back to writing, because that was what I used to do when I was really young. I would staple pages together and create all these stories, and I moved away from that. And so I felt there's just something that I needed to do that was missing. And I've always written, but it wasn't like I was writing stories. I would journal a lot. Once I was writing stories when I was young and journaling, and then I stopped writing stories and I was only journaling for a really long time. And then I needed to like come back to that. And I'm much better when I'm writing. Like I feel much more balanced. It's a way I get to figure out everything about life, and I don't try to answer questions. More so it's just to pose lots of questions through my stories.
Are there different modes of you when you are in, let's say, writing mode for a song, or writing mode as an author, writing mode as an editor? Are there different tones or different approaches that you take that you've seen successful in those fields, or is it kind of all encompassing into one person?
It's they're definitely different headspaces. But I have like jumped up when I'm writing something, and then I'm like, okay, I just think on that for a second. Oh, I had this melody. There's something that's just got this melody in my head that's like, let me just go really quickly and do that. And I do record myself, so that makes it a lot easier. But they are different headspaces. The interesting thing is that when I write music, I don't really write it down. I just like to kind of just have it in my head. But the minute I start writing it down on paper, it's just almost like it solidifies it, and it's hard for me to play with the idea anymore. So it's like solidifies it before I feel like it's really ready. And yeah, it just for some reason it's that way. When it comes to writing fiction, I sit down, I'm writing my notes out, my hand, and that actually helps me. I talk to myself a lot. I'm a person who talks to myself, so I do that. Um, it just comes out. Paper, computer. When I'm writing a picture book, that's a little bit different because I actually can't use a notebook. I tried it because, especially because it's kind of like poetry, but I tried it and it was just like blank, like nothing. I have to actually look at a computer screen and then just those few words. It's almost like I'm writing poetry on the screen. I don't really know why that is. And then I think of it before I actually write it down. So it's kind of similar. It's most similar to the way I write songs, actually.
Oh, okay.
Except the difference is that I think it out. I put all these little stanzas on the screen. They may not be connected, they may not be in order, but I do it that way, and then I come back to it later. And it's different because it's just like a song in that you can just sit down and try to figure it out for as long as you want to, but for me, it just doesn't come. It's like I either have it, if I don't have it, I have to come back later. And sometimes it'll click like, oh, why didn't I ever think about that phrase or that melody? So it's like that with writing the picture books. So it's a
Okay.
little different.
Did you have to see the illustrations or work with them in conjunction with your writing, or did they come later first? Did they do any kind of inspiration? Did you change anything after you saw the illustrations, or how did that process work out?
It actually works out where you write the whole thing first. So
Okay.
it's written for a long time, and then you're just kind of figuring out what would bring these to life, So it's just for me, it was before I even met my editor when I actually wrote this first one. And so I didn't really have an idea. I just knew what colors. Again, similar to
Mhm.
songs too. So for me, it wasn't just the visual. It was just like I see colors, I have a feeling. But when it's like, well, what are the visuals going to be? I was like, wow, that's a big question. I don't know because you want it to be something that's going to enhance and not take away. For
Yeah,
me, it's very easy for visuals to take away. I almost always never watch anyone's videos because their videos almost always take away from the song to me. And
I
not
agree, and it makes
that,
me mad.
right?
It makes me mad. I'm like, I don't like the song anymore because the video didn't match what I had in my head.
Oh no, you see, for me, it's just like it's not that I won't like the song. That's I feel bad for the song now because I'm like, oh no,
You
the
deserve better.
no, but it's like it's more that I see the song in like colors and
Mhm.
a mood, and so it's almost impossible that they're not going to be like, here's just a swath of red and black. It's just a screen with some red and black, smoky dark, and it's like that's not going to work really. I mean, I guess it
I
could
can
work.
see that even from looking at the illustrations in the book and how detailed they are, and very colorful, very saturated, intense colors. And then thinking about your music to where you used a lot of band sounds, a lot of horns, very deep, bass and stuff. So I can definitely see your connection as far as like the music, or I guess the feel behind the music, or the feel behind the color gives life to the words. So great
Yes,
connection.
yes.
Great connection.
When we were Connie, Shu, and I were talking about what we were really envisioning as far as like how the illustrations would work. The only thing I knew for sure was that I wanted to be something that could last for a long time. So nothing that's too like in the moment. I wanted to feel timeless. I wanted it to be beautiful and gorgeous. I wanted it to be, I guess those are the same things, beautiful and gorgeous. But I wanted it to be abstract as well. Like obviously you're looking at picture, and that was the line we were trying to dance upon was how do we make sure that it's grounded, because obviously we're looking at something, but also keeping with this magical, fantastical, symbolic quality, because so much of the book is about whatever you're going to do in life, and it's not a specific thing. It's just like the mountains you will climb, the valleys you'll experience, the highs and the lows, the being lost, being found, finding your way, inner voice. All of those things are things that could be any situation, and so it's like how do you not collapse it? How do you keep it expansive? And I think Risa Figueroa like did a fantastic job. When we saw
She
her
did.
work,
She
we
did.
were just like, okay, I think this is the one. And we're like, and then as the work was coming in, it was just so gorgeous, so beautiful. And we worked really well as a team, just noting things on color or just like perhaps this, perhaps that. I just have a fantastic, fantastic editorial team. And so I
Awesome.
think everyone came in with their greatness, and I felt like we created something we were really proud of.
Did once you did see her illustrations and work, did it kind of inspire you to where either you wanted to change something, or it gave you more ideas for like the next one, to kind of carry certain things on because those that work just inspired you so much?
Artists do really inspire a lot. It didn't make me want to change what was there, but but one thing I did get to see was like, okay, I've experienced now like imagery being put to my
Mhm.
words, and so it kind of like I feel like unlocked something because I'd never experienced that before. So I unlocked another like creative playroom, I guess, in my head where I could see like, oh, because even the process of just looking for someone who would illustrate the book and looking through various portfolios, I could see how like you could see some images and just be inspired by that.
Mhm.
And so it was a lot of fun. So it's just something that I just noted for the future, definitely.
Awesome. Did you experience any adversity, I guess, from the literacy world when transitioning? If they knew you as a musician and now you were coming into, I guess, their world in a way. Did you get any pushback from that, or have you felt any to where people are saying, "I thought you were this," or "I thought you were that," to where you can kind of step in those different boundaries?
It's so interesting when you say that because like when people do say like I thought you were this and I thought you were that, and it's so
Mhm.
interesting because it's like people have to know like who are you, like what are you, like I have to be able to figure you out, and it makes sense. It can be a good thing and it can be a negative for sure. I didn't feel like I had a lot of pushback really, maybe more surprise, but not even complete surprise actually. Not people were taken aback a little because they're like, oh, okay, I'm used to seeing you in this light, but they weren't totally surprised because I think the people who know me or peripherally even, they're like, oh yeah, like I think you really like books, right? You're always like talking about books. And then once I had my YouTube channel, and that was
Yes,
I started that in like 2014.
you did. It went from music videos to like the first book, and I remember then you did the "What's in My Bag" purse. I'm a fan, so you did the "What's in My Bag." And then but it just grew, and there was so much passion behind it. I guess for people like you said who knew you, they didn't see a transition. even, fans, we didn't know you, but we just saw you going into another realm of something that you had a voice in and you could lend, your creativity and your thoughts behind too. So I definitely see how you said it might have been a surprise to some,
Hmm.
but for the people who actually paid attention, because you were smart in your music, you use great grammar in your music, so why not in the book? So are you looking to, for me personally, the way that I learned how to read was books on tape. So yes, so and I know they have like the adult version now, Audibles, which is so crazy. I can't listen to Audibles. I tune them out for some reason. But
Really?
yeah, I
It's still the
learned how
same
to
now as.
read. Yeah, but I could do podcasts. It's weird.
Mhm.
I learned how to read looking at words and hearing them, and I started to recognize them in other places. I'm like, oh, so that's and that's two.
Yeah.
Are you looking into doing that? I think your voice to that book would be amazing. Just
The audio, are you talking about like the audiobook for you?
like a book on tape. First of all, it's you, so I mean, they're probably going to try to slide a song in there too. But just bringing that back because, like you said, the book is so universal for anyone. And to hear, for a child to hear it and they can go along with it because those pictures are going to captivate them either way. But have you thought about going into that realm, especially to where they can hear someone saying you're going to do great things?
Yes, actually, we do have the audiobook and we just finished. We're still putting together some parts of it, but the team has been really, really excellent. It's so beautiful. It does have music. This is fully soundscaped. So the sounds, I mean, it's gorgeous. It's funny that you mention it because we're in the midst of just finishing it off right now, like as we speak. And so, yes, and I did read the audiobook. I did read the audiobook, and which was a lot of fun and really important to me. And of course, holds a lot of sentimental value because the story is inspired by my son, River. And but yes, it's beautiful. The music, it sounds, it's like a soundtrack. The entire thing is just soundscaped, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I think it actually heightened it. My husband said, I think it actually gives a whole new experience and it takes it to another level. I'm like, you're right. I felt
I
that way too.
did.
And I wasn't sure how it was going to come out, but I knew that at least it would, have some music. And so it would be a good accompaniment. But I think it's a whole new experience. And so we listened to it and it's not even all the way finished, but we did listen to it and we're going to incorporate a little bit of, my son's voice
Oh, the
in there,
voice.
and like it's like I said, it's everything, and the music is gorgeous. Like I'm really happy with it.
Oh, I'm happy for that. Was he your ultimate, I guess, tester for the book? I know some, of course, inspired by him and what you wanted to say to him, but did you kind of run pages by him and say, "Hey, how does this?"
Well, by the time he was looking at everything, and he would be, the age where he could really do that because he's 4 now, and I
Mhm.
think when we started getting illustrations back, he was probably like 3,
Okay.
just 3, maybe 2, and so he would definitely be into it. But I didn't know like how like receptive he would be. But see, you
Hmm.
never know because when I had copies sitting on the desk, and I'd only mentioned once, like one day, here it is. Remember the book that I told you Mommy was working on? Because I wanted to be surprised. I didn't want to show it to him until like it was all done and in book form. Although I did show it to him before when it was like in proofs and things like that. But then I was like, okay, it's like the books that we have. And then he saw the covers and he was like, has Great Things been released? And I was like, oh my goodness, River. I was like, the whole concept and everything. I was like, we always underestimate kids all the time.
Yeah.
Paying attention. I'm like, I said, mentioned that once. And he just already knew the whole concept of one day it's going to come out, it'll be released, you'll find it in the places, in the bookstores. But he was very excited. And I knew he would love it because he loves everything from it's trucks, construction trucks, vehicles, emergency vehicles, dinosaurs. But he also loves really cute things. And he'll say, we love cute things.
Oh.
He is like a boy's boy. And I'm like, I was prepared to be like, look, I'm gonna leave whatever you want to play with. I'm down. I want to keep it open so you can explore. And he was like, trucks, crash. But then he'll say, oh, let's read Baby, I'm Your Mom. Or
Oh.
like, and he'll see like, oh, look at the baby and their mom and their daddy. So the baby is the family, and it's just like so he has all these sides, and that's the thing that's so great about seeing children grow up is that you have the chance, the privilege to nurture a whole human being and all of their many facets.
I love it. And now your book kind of gives people a guideline of some of the things that they might want to say or should say to their
Yeah.
kid. So I know you mentioned a book earlier. What were some of your favorites growing up and maybe some of your favorites now? Of course, your book club, you go through tons of books, but what have been some titles that stuck out to you, throughout the years?
Growing up, I'm trying to remember the ones that I liked. Okay, we'll go first in the very beginning. I probably like Winnie the Pooh. I liked Winnie the Pooh when I was really little. There was one book, I don't know how old, it's maybe third or fourth grade. The girl had ESP. It was like a little blonde girl on the cover, and she was like, she had ESP. It was kind of scary. It's like no, it wasn't a Fear Street book, but it was like one of those kinds of Fear Street. I liked Fear Street a lot, but that's a little later. If we're a little earlier, when I was like in third or fourth grade, I had very eclectic taste. So I would go into the library and check out so many books, and it would be Amelia Bedelia, loved. Mrs. Pigglewiggle, like the old school 1950s looking covers. But then I'd also have like Nostradamus, witches, and like ESP. I was really into that. I'm thinking like, I wonder if my parents were ever like, what are you reading? I mean, they see the Mrs. Pigglewiggle, Amelia Bedelia, and
Then they see Charmed,
Babysitter's Club. Right? This is before Charmed.
the history of witches in Salem or
Yeah,
something.
yes, something like that, and ESP and Nostradamus and prophecies of the apocalypse and all that. But I'm like in third and fourth grade, but it's right next to Mrs. Mary Poppins and Miss Pigglewiggle. So I just like to read a lot. But one of the books that really made a difference, I cannot, I've been looking for this book. You know, I go to used bookstores sometimes because I'm trying to
Mhm.
collect Sweet Valley High. I'm gonna get those because I remember the way they felt. But we'll get to that in a second. But I saw there was a book where the girl was a picture book, and she somehow got into a library and exhibition or a museum or exhibition, and the mummy came to life, and the mummy girl took her on this like fantastic journey over town. They're like flying. It was like a mummy and her cat, but she had brown skin and dark hair like me. And I was like I just never really saw that. I don't know what the name of the book
Oh,
is. And I was like, oh wow. And I remember it was almost as if I was so happy to see something I didn't even know was missing.
awesome, awesome. Okay, well, won't keep you too long, but if you could tell everyone the book comes out next month, where they can find it, pre-order it, what they can do to get it, because they need, even if they don't have kids, I think it's a great book just to have to where you know how to possibly enrich a child that you're going to be
And for
around.
graduates, a great
Correct.
graduate present.
Yes, yes. And it doesn't
Graduate,
have to be a child. It could just be
yes.
anybody that you want to say something to and remind them how great they're going to be in their next part of life. So tell them where they can get it.
You will do great things comes out March 28th. You can go to amory.co, and you'll see a big page where you can pre-order it from anywhere you like, whether you like to go to Barnes and Nobles or support your local indies or Amazon. You'll see all the links there. I'm also doing a few things so people can get like autographed copies. And so whatever is your bag, you'll be able to find it there. I know you like to, for me, I like to shop where it's easiest. So if I already am a membership or I support an indie, I do that. But yeah, March 28th, You Will Do Great Things will be out. The audiobook will also be releasing the same time. And I will say it does feel really cool to listen to the audiobook and have that playing while you're going through the book, because it's not just the words, it's like the music constantly going through, sound effects, like as you see the story playing. They did such a phenomenal job with that. So definitely
Oh, I
check it
love this
out.
from you. I love this. I love this. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll be checking it out and we'll make sure all our readers do too. But again, thank you. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so very much. Thanks for having me.